Well, the government has delayed a major decision on the expansion of Gatwick Airport this morning, but it has said it is minded to approve the use of its standby runway as an additional permanent runway. Gatwick is the busiest single runway airport in the UK. I think it might be actually in the world, and the expansion would enable it to deal with around 100,000 extra flights a year. That would mean the airport could handle, in total, more than 380,000 flights per year. The report says the expansion would create around 14,000 new jobs and inject an extra £1 billion into the region's economy every year. Well, in practical terms, the airport says construction could start as soon as it's given the green light. It started this year. It could be completed and ready for operation by the end of the decade. To bring the emergency runway into regular use would mean moving it by 12 metres to bring it into line with international safety standards. Well, let's speak to Paul Kelso, who is at Gatwick for us this morning. Very good morning to you, Paul. Just talk us through what has held this up, because the expectation this morning was that it was going to be given the green light.
Yes, we know the government is in favour of airport expansion. We've heard the Chancellor talk about it in the context of Heathrow Airport. They believe it's part of this growth strategy. Gatwick was quite confident it would get a decision today. It perhaps wasn't expecting the caveat of this delay to a final decision. But we can be very clear about what the government wants to do. The Secretary of State, she is minded, this is Heidi Alexander, minded to approve this expansion. A government source has told me this sends a very clear message that the government will stop at nothing. In other words, it chooses to deliver growth. They called it a victory for holiday makers. That's the easy bit. The difficult bit is just squaring off the areas that remain contentious. I'll try and keep this as simple as possible. This is a first in planning law. Gatwick put in a plan for this airport, for this runway expansion, which the planning inspectorate rejected. But the planning inspectorate itself, in view of the Gatwick's desire for a new runway and the government support, has put in an alternative proposal, effectively, to Gatwick to work on. And it is that alternative that, if Gatwick can deal with the outstanding areas, the Secretary of State will approve. Those areas are broadly noise, the additional noise pollution, how that can be mitigated for people who live locally, and transport. They want more than 50% of people to arrive by public transport for the new runway to be in use. So those are the areas that are still outstanding. And talking to government sources, they say that this delay, while not ideal, is the best that could be expected at the moment, because the alternative would be, without this second plan, the Secretary of State would have to either reject Gatwick's proposal out of hand, and there would be no second runway, definitely, or she would have to overturn the planning inspectorate, and that, of course, leaves them, in the words of what one person described as, staggeringly vulnerable to legal challenge. So we have this delay, but there is a clear commitment from government to try and make this happen. We've just had a statement from Gatwick's chief executive welcoming this step. Their issue is looking at these mitigations around noise and transport. Is this still an investable plan? Because this will be a £2 billion project of private money.
And this is different from Heathrow, isn't it, Paul, in the sense that the runway is already there effectively, so it's not nearly as much as construction as you might expect. If, and it is an if, of course, Gatwick decides to go ahead with this, when are we looking at potentially this runway being actually in use? What's the timescale here?
Well, Gatwick has said they would like to, once they've got the green light, they can get working, they were saying, by the end of the year. I'll get a chance to talk to the chief executive in the next hour, and we can find out how this 9-month potential delay, the decision could come sooner should these issues be resolved. How that will affect the timescale. They'd like to be moving planes in and out of here by the end of the decade, is my understanding. It is, we talk about moving a runway 12 metres. You can't just pick it up and move it, of course. It's effectively building a new one. So it is a major project, but it doesn't have the complexity, you're right, of Heathrow, where the M25 is going to have to be moved into a tunnel, which is an enormous project that will take decades, but a decade perhaps, not years. So they expect to be able to get on with this quite quickly. They will still have have to deal with objections. Just very quickly, a bit of reaction. Greenpeace have said by approving Gatwick's expansion, the government will hang a millstone the size of a 747 round the country's neck. The only thing it's set to boost is air pollution, noise and climate emissions. Interestingly, the local opposition group, the Campaign Against Gatwick Noise and Emissions, they've welcomed the extension by the Secretary of State, they say, as she has obviously recognised the many holes in the Gatwick Airport's submissions. That is not the government's position, but clearly objectors see an opportunity to explore every legal avenue here to try and delay and ultimately prevent this expansion. And that, of course, I think is one of the major reasons why the government is granting this extra time to try and have this, what is a first in major planning projects, have this actually reach fruition without legal challenge. There'll probably be legal challenge, but without a challenge that will prevent it happening.